You are listening to the Motherhood Unstressed podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Carlisle. Thank you for tuning in. I'm so glad you're here. It has been a minute, but I decided to take my own advice and engage in some self-care, and I didn't do much of the show over the summer. I was really just home with the kids, taking care of them, having a good time this summer, and it was really good. And if you're back after the break, I'm so happy that you are. I've got a great episode to launch us into this next season of shows. And this week I'm speaking with captivating children's book author and practical philosophy teacher, Aedo. He's joining us to explain his innovative approach to storytelling in doing it in a way that nurtures accountability and confidence in your children. As a mom, I'm always looking for ways to improve my parenting style and just my overall knowledge as a parent. And this was an episode that really shifted, again, the way I think about things and the way I'm going to be doing things in a positive manner. And Jay talks about the profound impact of stories on our history, on how we grow up. And yet in so many of those stories, those Bible stories, there's an abundance of victimhood, self-blame, guilt, fear, really these negative emotions. So through a conscious and compassionate lens, he's aiming to revolutionize these narratives by empowering this next generation to embrace responsibility, to own it, to be disciplined. And in doing that, you understand that you have the ability to forge your own unique path. And so I think it's a great reminder to really be thinking about what you're thinking about, and then as a parent, be modeling that conscious behavior to your children, because again, we all know they're not going to do what you say, they're going to do what you do. So I love this conversation with Jay. Be sure to check him out. All of his information's in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode, as always, please share it out, leave us a review. And again, I'm glad you're back. It's good to be back. Enjoy this episode with Aedo. Well, hello, Jay. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thanks for having me, Liz. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always kind of know right away if I want to interview someone, if I want to share their work with my audience, because it's a very certain kind of person, and you definitely fit that bill. But before we get into all of your work, would you mind giving us kind of a bird's eye view of the events, the major events in your life that led you to the work that you're doing now?
Well, I suppose it starts with my childhood. I grew up in a religious household that was very strict, and it kind of led to my adulthood questioning things and depression and anxiety, and just kind of working through leaving that way of how I grew up and being okay with that. And then just going through my healing process of understanding what healing even meant. I actually I was in a lot of pain. I was working construction, so I had back pain, and that led me to search for alternative ways of healing. To which that's when I realized I had like my big epiphany. I suppose my first big realization was that the physical pain stemmed from an emotional pain that I wasn't addressing. And so it stemmed from just holding on to a lot of resentment and anger, to which I learned to deal with, and I learned to really heal and acknowledge those things for what they were and take responsibility for a lot of things I was avoiding, to which actually led to me, not right away, but several years later, it led to actually healing physically, led to a lot of more understanding, because I had a lot of time where I didn't have to focus on the pain anymore. So now I had a lot of free time to understand my purpose in life, and then it led to being able to express my true thoughts in a way where it was receptive to my family, my friends. So I think it stemmed from wanting to share something without offending. And so I hope that kind of sums it up. I'm not sure if you have any
Yeah.
further questions.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like you had to have your own hero's journey. You know, you had to go through the wilderness to come back and be at a place of power and health and go through that healing, as hard as it was, but it was almost necessary. And now I think through this work that you're doing, you're bringing everyone else up with you. Is that right?
Yeah, thanks for seeing it that way.
I mean, it's what I've interviewed a lot of people, and that typically is what happens. It's like you have to go through this dark night of the soul in order to get to a place where you can actually be of service to other people. Because if you don't, then you don't even really have a foot to stand on. You're just kind of regurgitating maybe what you heard growing up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have to ask though, what were some of the alternative methods that you used to healing? I think a lot of people are experiencing pain and they'd be interested to know.
Yeah, well, the main one that I did was kind of like a risky one where I went to the jungles of Peru and I did ayahuasca. So I did 4 ceremonies, which led to, that was like the big epiphany where I was holding on to all this guilt and resentment, to which led to me starting after that I had like a goal, a purpose, which was to return to that facility as a facilitator. So I kind of shifted my work to figuring out online business, so that I can go there and run a business while I was facilitating, which I accomplished.
That's amazing. I couldn't imagine doing 4 ceremonies in a row. I've never done one ceremony, but it's always been something on my bucket list to do, because you hear all these stories of people having these amazing transformative moments and just realizing what was going on in their subconscious where they had no idea before. Was that what it happened for you? Did you have visions and did it all kind of make sense after it was done?
Yeah, I mean, it was a process. I can't quite piece together what that process was, but it was 4 ceremonies over 9 days.
Oh, okay.
And then I went home and kind of, they call it integrating and starting meditating and like just these new habits that I wasn't doing before. And then things just slowly started piecing together and clicking as far as like where things stem from and where things are going, and my ability to change the direction of, from this moment. If I don't like where things are going, I can change it based on what I do right now. Yeah. So I just started piecing that together for myself.
And then how long from that experience did the physical pain actually dissipate?
I would say maybe 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And no surgery or anything like that?
No, wow. but I was told that I needed surgery. I had a ruptured disc is what was wrong with me, according to an exam that I had.
Wow. Good for you. That's so empowering. I love it. Just having stories like yours out there in the world, like it gives people hope, it gives people another way to approach something. You don't always have to follow what the masses do. There are other miracles out there. Okay. So we don't have a ton of time. So I want to transition to the meat of this interview and talk about your work, Conscious Bible Stories. Now, where did this idea come from? Why did you want to take this on and put this out into the world?
Yeah, well, I always felt that there was something off about these stories, like the Cain and Abel story, the Adam and Eve story. And I guess it's been maybe 2 years now where I started writing these books in the form of from the perspective of what we would want these stories to be, from a triumphant point of view, as opposed to a victim point of view. And so, the Cain and Abel story, like Abel becomes, our hero, it becomes the victim and he just dies. So I feel like a part of us died with him, and that story repeats on a loop throughout history. And then if you look out into the world, I noticed that we're just all Cain. We're all just resentful and angry and vengeful and just not taking responsibility for our actions. And then so I wanted to write this story in a way where when Cain goes to attack Abel to kill him, Abel sees that attack coming because he's disciplined and composed within himself. And so he's able to subdue Cain and sort of put him in his place, but he doesn't retaliate. He doesn't try to kill him back, which is the most powerful part of the story, I feel, because he breaks the spell. He breaks the program by clearing up the misunderstanding. And so Cain and Abel are then able to have a dialogue, which leads to Cain realizing the misunderstanding within himself. You see, he didn't know who God was, so he didn't know why he would give the best of himself to someone he doesn't know. In the case of like when he's supposed to offer a sacrifice, and so he gives just like he's a farmer, so he gives just subpar vegetation, and he saves the best for himself and his family, which is the discussion him and Cable are having. And Abel points it out. Well, you did give your best to God because that's what God is. It's yourself and everything around you. And so, Cain has this realization where, he sees the error of his ways in that moment, and he apologizes. He takes responsibility. He begs for his brother's forgiveness, but Abel had already forgiven him, because that's why he, instead of retaliating, he cleared up the misunderstanding. And so in my story, they go on, as brothers, they leave home and they go off into the unknown, which is a big part of the hero's journey. They go off into the unknown and they create a great story. It just kind of shifted the direction of humanity, at least for myself. Just thinking of that story made me feel very at peace. Right. And which made me want to write it out and share it.
I love that. And do you feel like certain stories resonate with parents and kids more than others? I mean, what stories, especially in the days that we're living in now, do you think really hit home, or do they all kind of resonate? Because we all kind of need this.
I think different stories resonate with different personalities. I believe that these biblical stories are impregnated into our system to where you don't even really need to hear the story. You just see how people act in real time. And we're acting out these stories in real time. That's how I feel. And I feel the only thing that sort of makes us human is the fact that we can create stories and we can buy and sell stories. We can pick them up and run off with them as if they were true. And the only thing that makes any of the stories true is the fact that we bought into it, and with our actions, with our belief system. Realizing that for myself was very empowering, because I realized that I can believe anything I want, as long as I just have to find the evidence to support my belief. And that's a very empowering thought for myself. And I think it's very empowering for those around me too, my friends' kids. And so I'm really looking forward to see where this goes.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost, again, like putting the responsibility of one's life in their own hands. And with that comes a lot of work and a lot of discipline. And I think for the majority of people, we're so used to just having everything fed to us, how to think, how to act, what we should do. So many people are on like an automatic program. And so it's difficult. But I find that, especially if you can teach this to your kids early and then model that behavior, it's so much easier, because it's so much harder for any kind of adult to be like, okay, I'm not going to play a victim anymore. I'm going to take responsibility for my life, when the programming and the grooves in the brain are just so deep at that point.
Absolutely. I think the hardest part isn't the actual hard work. It's breaking yourself out of the old patterns of behavior to adopt a new way of work. But the hard work is actually, once you build a discipline around it and you're convinced of what you're doing, it's actually quite simple. It's not easy. It still takes a lot of conscious effort, but it's simple. You just have to do it.
Yeah. And let's talk about conscious parenting and conscious living. Why was that such a fundamental pillar in the work that you do, in the stories that you're telling? It's like being present, being really aware of what's going on right here and right now. How does one even start to do that without calling it out? Like they're listening to this show, they're starting to understand, but what's something that they can do to become more conscious and to be more conscious parents?
Well, I'll start by sharing, I'm not a parent myself, but I am a child of parents. And like I started out saying, when I started my healing process, I was holding on to a lot of resentment toward my parents because I felt like perhaps they tricked me or something like that. But it was actually a misunderstanding within myself. They were actually doing their very best. And I was perhaps being too hard on them. And so what I did was I shifted my thinking into empowering them. And so I gave them the credit that they never got, because it wasn't me being hard on them. They were actually harder on themselves because, they felt like they lost me or like they weren't good enough. And so I found this out by talking to them and then by assuring them that they did do their very best and to never think otherwise. And so by shifting the relationship I had with my own parents, I realized that that's where it all stems from. If I could do it from this point of view, I can definitely do it from the parents' point of view. It'll be much simpler to program, an innocent child to empower him from the very beginning. It starts with the parents. And it's not just the stories you share, but it's the story you live out. Your kids aren't going to really do what you tell them to do. They're going to do what you do.
Yes.
And so the conscious effort stems from wanting to be that guiding light. You want them to be great. You have to be great. You have to be that role model for them. And that includes being honest about your mistakes, owning up to what you're working on. You can tell them that you failed. You can tell them that you tried something and you failed. And they're going to see you get up and try again until you succeed. And then so at some point your kids will realize why you're so successful. They're going to realize that it's because it was built on a mountain of failure, and owning up to that, because there's so many things to own up to. It's quite simple to point these things out. You just have to be honest with yourself and be honest with your kids and want to be that light. And your kids are going to pick up on the subtleties for sure.
I fully believe that. And I think a lot of parents tuning into this will think, well, my kid doesn't really listen to me. They're on YouTube, they're with their friends, they're absorbed in their phone. They're not really, watching everything that I'm doing and listening to everything that I'm saying. But I have found that to not be true at all. Like my son's, he's 11, my oldest son, he'll say something that I said months ago and in a situation, and he'll bring it up, and it's like it would happen yesterday. And so I know on a visceral level that they are listening and watching everything that we're doing. And so that motivates me to bring my best to the situation. And if I mess up, which I will, to admit that. And so I love hearing that from you. What do you do in your day that kind of sets the tone, that kind of preps you to have this kind of mindset? Because I love talking about this. I love like theorizing about this, but then it's like, okay, when the rubber meets the road and you're in a stressful situation, you don't always act the best way. So how can you prep yourself so that you are bringing your best self to the day to your kids?
Well, I mean, to your point, I put myself in stressful situations on purpose with like exercising, lifting up heavy things. So just, I start my day off by doing something rigorous, difficult, cold showers or meditation. And, it really doesn't take that long. I wake up early, which is difficult on its own. So you start off the day just by doing these simple but difficult things, and eat the best that I can, rest, because obviously if you're hungry, if you're tired, you're not going to be able to make the best decisions. So if you give yourself, a foundation to succeed off of, you will succeed. You just have to make that conscious effort first thing in the morning. Because why first thing in the morning? It's because it's when you become conscious. You were unconscious and you literally became conscious, and now you have to take some conscious steps rather than stumbling through your day or a cup of coffee and just because that's what the program says to do. It's just mundane. But if you make an effort, you will be able to make better choices when those stressful situations inevitably arise.
Yeah. It sounds to me like discipline is really at the forefront of your healing journey, of your self-awareness, of conscious Bible stories, all of that. I mean, you had to be disciplined in order to produce this and to create a life that you enjoyed living and doing the things that you wanted to live. How can we all become more disciplined aside from getting up early and knocking out that workout at the beginning of the day? Is it any other advice that you want to leave with the listener?
Sure. I mean, look, I'm a pretty weird guy. I do have the mantras. I do lots of stuff. But I think, to your point, to the discipline is realizing that you're already disciplined. Perhaps you're disciplined in poor behavior, but that's discipline within itself. And so you can just shift the direction of the discipline. You shift everything else. And discipline just means you're doing something consistently, no matter what. And so, if you're staying up late and waking up late and, drinking and, just falling into the program, that's discipline too. So it's just acknowledging the things that you do like that you do and the things that you don't like, and just making that conscious effort. It really becomes that. Like, nobody else is going to do it for you. Nobody else is going to point it out for you. You're the only one that can do it. And I think that's what kids notice the most. It's very empowering that you can do this for yourself. And it's very empowering that nobody else can do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like a double-edged sword. It's like, oh, I don't want to have to take control of my life. But at the same time, it's like, I can take control of my life and I can make it a really beautiful experience, with all of the storms that come inevitably. I love that.
Yeah. And that's what makes a great story.
How important is storytelling in our lives? Is it everything?
I think so. I think it's the only thing that separates us from the animals is our ability to tell stories, and buy into those stories and take them into any direction. If you notice, any obstacle that comes our way, we can look at it from a couple of different perspectives. We can look at it, from the point of view of like, oh man, not again. This always happens to me. It's like that inner dialogue, right? Or, oh, this is an opportunity for me to learn and grow. I understand the mistakes that I made. And because of these mistakes, now I won't make those mistakes again. And this is the dialogue also. The great thing about it is that it's not one or the other. You can take a moment for yourself and look at the stories available to you, and then make a conscious choice. I make my choices not based on, whichever story comes to me first. I make my choices based on which story is most empowering for the direction I want to go. So if I have a goal, if I have something that I'm striving for, which story is going to get me there and which story is going to get me away from there? And then I make my choice.
What do you say to people who are like, "Oh, that's just living in a delusional manner. That's not real life. You're checked out of reality." What do you say to them?
Yeah, I would say it could be a delusion within myself. Perhaps I'm living out a delusion, but it's my story, and I will live whichever story I choose for me. As long as I'm not hurting you, what do you care what I believe?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's that reframing that changes everything. And I'm learning that more and more. The older I get, it's like, oh, okay, it really didn't have to be so horrible. Or was that moment in my life terrible? Or, could I change the story now? And the people that I've talked to, you can actually go back and change stories that you used to tell yourself about childhood or about an event that happened in middle school or whatever. And it can actually provide healing in your body now, in the present.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. That's alchemy.
It sure is, Liz.
Awesome. Were any of the stories, did you find any friction in rewriting any of the Bible stories?
I think I'm still pretty early on this journey, but the truth is that so far they've been very well received. Anybody that gives me an opportunity to share why I did this understands where I'm coming from. The only thing I can think of right now, as far as resistance, like a review, I had a 1-star review on my Amazon listing. Somebody just disagreed with the message. I was actually expecting a lot more backlash, but the truth is, like, it's been very well received. I'm quite surprised, like how loving and understanding people are. And like I said, if once people give me an opportunity to express where I'm coming from with this, even my own parents, it's a conflict with their own belief system. They understand where I'm coming from. They love me. They love me because I'm doing something difficult, and I'm sharing it with them. And in their old age, I still want to share things with them. I still want to clear up the misunderstanding. That's very valuable.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I think that that's beautiful. Jay, we are almost to the end of time here. Do you have anything about your work, anything about your life, just your general message that you want to leave with the listener today?
I think you did a really great job of asking questions that pulled it out of me. I feel like I've done a really great job writing these stories. Right now, the Cain and Abel story is available. The Adam and Eve story retold. They're available on Amazon. You can search for Conscious Bible Stories. Support my work if you like my message, what I'm trying to do. I'm actually quite an introverted person, so expressing my thoughts and ideas is a challenge for me, but I'm working on it. I'm getting better at it. So yeah, any suggestions that you may have for me, you can reach out. I'm on Instagram.
And what is your Instagram?
It's at Conscious Bible Stories.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Jay, thank you so much for the conversation, for the insights. And I don't know, I feel extra motivated after speaking with you. So thank you for that. And keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Liz. Thank you for having me.